Welcome to the African Weekly Roundup, a weekly program every Sunday here on HORUFADHI Media, where I discuss the latest news and events across the African continent. I'm Sudan Mohammed, your host and producer here on HORUFADHI Media. We hope you find this program very informative. Please like, share, and for similar content, do subscribe to HORUFADHI Media, and also do subscribe to HORUFADHI Media Group's second channel known as HORUFADHI TV, where you are currently watching this program and where you can find other exclusive programs such as Behind the Scenes and Mahahe Sola, among others. And last but not least, do follow myself, Sultan Mohammed, Suleiman Hashi, Yasin Abdi, and the wider HORUFADHI Media team on our social media platforms that should appear on the screen any moment. Let's get straight into the news. We kick off over in Chad, where Chad's President Mohamed Idris declared a state of emergency on Wednesday over flooding that is affecting more than 1 million people in the Central African country. Floods are not uncommon during Chad's rainy season, which usually runs from May to October in its southern regions, but this year, the rains came early and were the heaviest in decades. The government has put in place a response plan to provide shelter, food and sanitation, the president said. The flooding has affected 636 localities in 18 out of 23 provinces in the country. The worst affected are southern provinces, including provinces like Mayo Kebbi and Mandu. Now, the floodwaters have swallowed up more than 1.15 million acres of fields and 19,000 heads of livestock, the president said. The capital has not been spared either. Hundreds of people have fled their homes due to flooding in the last few days. The government has put in place a response at the moment, according to the president. Chad has two main rivers, the Chari and the Lagoon, which flow through its southern provinces and empty into Lake Chad at the border area with Nigeria and Cameroon. This year, the lake was fed early on by other tributaries and its water level became higher than that of the two rivers, causing them to flow instead into the surrounding towns and villages, said Chad's National Meteorological Agency. And this comes at a time where protests have rocked the entire country. And in response to the protests, Chadian security forces have opened fire on anti-government protesters in the country's two largest cities, killing dozens of people. Now, the Chadian government spokesman Aziz Mohammed Saleh said 30 people were dead in the capital, but organizers have placed the toll at a much higher number of 40 on Thursday. A further 32 protesters were killed in Chad's second largest city, Mandu, according to an official in the city's morgue. Now, the official who spoke on the condition of anonymity because of sensitivity of the matter said more than 60 people were wounded. At the main hospital in the capital, overwhelmed doctors tended to scores of people with gunshot wounds. Police earlier fired tear gas at crowds, but the demonstrators continued advancing and their numbers grew. It was then that security forces opened fire, leaving protesters struggling to gather the dead from the scenes. Among those killed in it was a Chaldean journalist, Nasris Ordije, who worked for COFEOD radio and was struck by a bullet. Hundreds of people took to the streets to mark the date when the military initially promised to hand over power, a period that has been extended for another 2 years. The country has been rocked by a political crisis since long-term President Idris Deby was killed on a battlefield in April 2021 while visiting frontline troops. The current president and his son Mohamed Idris was then installed by the military as interim president. He had initially promised not to take part in elections that would follow an 18-month transition to civilian rule, but as the deadline neared, a nationwide forum staged by Deby reset the clock. On October 1st, it approved a new maximum 24-month timeframe for holding elections. It also named Deby a transitional president and declared he could be a candidate in the polls. Now, Deby was sworn in on October 10th and later appointed a so-called Government of National Union headed by Prime Minister Saleh Kebzubu. The headquarters of Kazubu's NDR party was also attacked by demonstrators and initially burned down, the UNDR vice president said. There were also reports of barricades being set up in several districts and tires were being set alight in the main avenues to block traffic. Security forces have cracked down on several civil society and opposition-led protests, denouncing the military takeover and France's backing of the transitional government, at times killing people in the crackdown. In May, police fired tear gas and used water cannon to disperse anti-French protests that saw the destruction of French-linked businesses. Now, over to neighbouring Sudan, where thousands of protesters gathered on Sunday in front of an army headquarters in Sudanese city of Damazin, eyewitnesses said, protesting recent ethnic clashes in the country's south that have killed 200 people. Now, protesters tried to enter the army headquarters before setting fire to the state government building, President Abdul Qadir Ibrahim told AFP by phone from Damazin, the capital of Sudan's southern Blue Nile state, which borders Ethiopia and South Sudan. At least 200 people were killed in 2 days last week, official media said Saturday, after clashes broke out over reported land disputes between members of the Hausa people and rival groups. Residents said homes and shops were set ablaze and hundreds had fled intense gunfire. Hospitals are facing huge shortage of medicine as the number of injured increases, said the State Minister of Health, Jamal Nasir. Now, State Governor Ahmed Al-Umda Badi declared a state of emergency on Friday to quell some of the worst fighting in recent months. From July to early October, at least 149 people were killed and 65,000 people displaced in the Blue Nile, according to the United Nations. Protesters chanted Al-Umda must leave, accusing the governor of failing to protect them, according to eyewitness Haram Uthman. And the Hausa have mobilized across Sudan, claiming tribal law discriminates against them by preventing them from owning land in the Blue Nile because they were the last group to arrive there. Access to land is highly sensitive in the impoverished country, where agriculture and livestock account for 43% of employment and 30% of GDP, according to the UN and World Bank statistics. Sudan has been grappling with deepening political unrest and a spiraling economic crisis since a military coup last year led by Army Chief Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. A surge in ethnic violence in recent months has highlighted the security breakdown in Sudan since the coup, and nearly 600 people have been killed and at least 211,000 forced to flee their homes in intercommunal conflicts across the country since January 2022, according to the UN. Now over to Ethiopia, where peace talks in the war in Ethiopia will start on Monday in South Africa, the African Union said on Friday, following earlier commitments by the government and Tigray rebels to participate. The Ethiopian government and its allies, which include Eritrea, have been fighting Tigray rebels in the north of the country on and off since late 2020. The conflict has killed thousands and displaced millions and left hundreds of thousands on the brink of famine. Now, both sides had committed to talks earlier this month, but they were delayed for logistical reasons. Now, the Ethiopian government and TPLF leaders agreed to join talks that would be mediated by African Union envoy and South Africa's former deputy president, as well as former Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta. And the African Union Peace and Security Council said on Friday it welcomed mutual commitments to genuinely participate in peace process. Ridwan Hussein, National Security Advisor to Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, said the government will participate in the African Union-led talks from October 24th. Now, the TPLF spokesman did not immediately respond to a request for comment by international media. Now, peace talks are set to start just days after the Ethiopian army and its allies seized 3 large towns in the Tigray region, one to the northwest and 2 to the south of the regional capital of Mekelle. The government this week vowed to seize airports and other federal sites from rebel control as part of defense measures, according to the government's statement. Now, Tigray TV, a media outlet controlled by Tigray rebels, said on Friday their forces had released over 9,000 Eritrean and Ethiopian prisoners of war, including 500 women. The station reported that prisoners of war were released because the enemy is the Ethiopian government, not the frontline soldiers who they said were forced to fight. And finally, over to neighboring Somalia, a car bomb and a shooting attack took place in a hotel in Somalia's Kismayo city, killing at least 3 people this afternoon. Gunfire erupted after an explosive-laden vehicle rammed into the gate of the port city Tawakkal Hotel. The Al-Qaeda-linked Al-Shabaab militant group said it had carried out the attack. Now, the state-run Somali national television said on Twitter, security forces were dealing with a terrorist incident at the hotel. When the blast and attack occurred, there was a meeting in the hotel and a plan to launch a massive war on Al-Shabaab, according to some reports. Now, Mohammed Noor, a police captain, and Farah Ali, a shopkeeper in Kismayo, told Reuters the blast at Tawakkal Hotel preceded the gunfire. Video footage from Somalia National Television posted on its Twitter account showed security personnel load one of the wounded into an ambulance. Now, Abdul Aziz Abu Mus'ab, Al-Shabaab's military operations spokesperson, said the group was behind the attack, which he said was intended to strike Jubaland region's administrators who worked from Tawakkal Hotel. Now, Mohammed Nasir Guled, Jubaland's deputy chief of police, said on Somalia National Television there were 3 attackers at the hotel and the police were working to end the attack as soon as possible. And Kismayo is the commercial capital of Jubaland State, a federal member state of Somalia. Its capital, however, Bu'ale, is still under Al-Shabaab control. Now, Al-Shabaab was driven out of Kismayo in 2012. The city's port had been a major source of revenue for the group from taxes, charcoal exports, and levies on arms and other illegal imports. Now, a UN report recently released in around 2017 stated that Al-Shabaab made around $150 million annually from taxation in that port city. Now, in 2019, a similar attack at a hotel in Kismayo killed at least 26 people. Now, that is all our top stories on the African continent this week. Please tune in next week for our weekly roundups.